Alright, well, I'm going to attempt to make a video on what I'm doing in here. This is our Ceduna 15 from Ezitrail, and I have decided that I want to run the air conditioner off grid, and I do not want to be carrying petrol or anything, so therefore I don't want a generator because my car's diesel and I've got a diesel heater and I've got electric chainsaws and everything, so I don't want to be running a generator just to run the aircon when we're completely off grid. So we've decided to go with a lithium power system. So I've decided to film this video. It's my first ever video. I've never done this before and I'm kind of a little nervous about it, but yeah, I've decided to do a quick little build video of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Unfortunately, I decided to do this after I started, so I've already pulled the system apart, so I'll quickly show you what I've already done, and then I'll tell you what I'm planning on doing. So, as you can see, there used to be 3 AGM batteries in there, and there was a little wall with a charger and the solar regulator. I've taken all of that out. I've labelled all the wires so that I know what they are for when the new batteries go in, and well, there's one of the old batteries sitting here on the floor. They were AGMs, as you can see, 100 amp hour AGMs. The new batteries that are going in are going to be power pole batteries. I'll try and put a photo up or something right now, show you what they are, but I've got 2 of them coming. Both of those should be around 300 amp hours, and the plan is to fit them long ways. I'll zoom out a little. Here. I'm not sure whether I'll go against the back wall yet or against the front wall, or possibly go against this back wall. Long ways, and they'll run to about here. And then I've got a new solar regulator from Renogy that's going to go in. I've got a DC charger from Renogy as well that's also going to go in to charge it while I'm driving. I've got a 30 amp Victron 240 volt charger, and I'm going to be running a Enerdrive 2000 watt AC inverter with the transfer switch built in, so it's all going to be wired up to the van. So that's all the, and also a Renogy battery monitor. So that's where I'm at the moment. I've completely stripped out everything, ready to put it in. The batteries haven't turned up yet, they're coming shortly. I've also had to take all the doors off this cabinet here so that I can get to the wiring behind, and this mess of wiring up here. That's all factory from Ezitrail. I have removed already the factory voltmeter, which was in that slot in there, and I'm going to put the inverter power controls in that position. The battery meter, which is this thing here, or the monitor should I say, I've decided, because it's not going to fit in this control panel, normally there's a shelf on top here, and this is quite small, so we've decided to maybe go on this outside position here, and we might stick it there. And when we get the electrician to wire the inverter up to the van, because we've got to do that legally, we're going to get an extra power point put in here. This is normally where the sink and the little cooker is, but as you can see at the moment with the construction, it's a bit of a mess. Anyhow, I'll come back when we start fitting some of this stuff. Okay, so I've finished the install of the power system, and for the most part I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. It's taken me a couple of days because I was waiting for parts to turn up, and then not being fully equipped I had to constantly go to the shops and buy something else, or another bit of wire or another terminal or something like that. But let me flip the camera around and I'll show you this. So we'll start up here. We've got a Renogy battery monitor, and as you can see it's charging at the moment, and we're putting in about 25 amps just at the moment, and it's obviously a reasonably large battery system. So down here we've got the PowerPole Scout batteries. These are the new 300 amp hour batteries. And as you can see, these two tested up at 316 amp hours each, giving me a total of 632 amp hours. So I'm really happy with that. And they fitted into the battery compartment on the Ceduna quite nicely. Over here I have the Renogy 40 amp MPPT charge controller. That's hooked up to the solar panels on the roof, which I've got 300 watts of solar panel, and it's also got into it in series the Anderson plug for the portable solar panels, which I've currently got 160 watts, sorry, of portable solar panels, but they're all hooked up in, sorry, not in series, in parallel, so that they can be all plugged in together and it doesn't affect the system. That 40 amps is well and truly enough to handle those solar panels. Ultimately I'd like to put some more panels on the roof, but at this stage I'm going to stick with the 300 on the roof and the 160 portable, giving me 460 watts, which isn't quite enough, but it'll get the job done for the time being. Following that down there, I've got the Victron 240 volt charger, the 30 amp, and that is currently charging the batteries. And there I have the Renogy 40 amp DC to DC battery charger. I went with this particular one as opposed to the unit that has the solar and everything built in, just to keep the cost down a little bit. Then I have the 2000 watt Enerdrive e-power inverter, which is now currently plugged into the most of the sockets and the air conditioning and everything in the van. It runs it really quite nicely. The whole, and then via over here in this mess of wires, which is mostly factory, which I'm not happy about, and I need to go through and really tidy it up. But you know, that's how the van came, basically, with most of that stuff in it. And this distribution box here, I really don't like. It's really hard to get into it, and because all the wires are coming into the same box, everything's all jamming up here. I'm going to eventually replace this with a positive buzz bar and a negative buzz bar separately, so that I can put proper terminals on, because these just push in and tighten up on plain wires. So I'm going to put, yeah, proper bus bars in there with proper terminals on all the wires, and then I can route them all properly. But that's still to come, that job. So I think that's it for the battery system. Obviously I've got a main cut-off switch here, which powers the distribution box, which goes to everything in the van, 12 volt wise, and then we've got the big 250 amp fuse here for the inverter, which then runs around the back end into the inverter. Oh, and just on this other side, under this flap, that's where I mounted the negative cabling, all the earth cabling, and the shunt for the battery monitor up there. So that all runs up there, and then it all runs, of course, through the other side down there and into the main 240 volt distribution box down here. So the way it works in this van, when the power comes in from the outside, when you plug into shore power, it runs around and runs directly into this RCD down here. It then, from the other side of the RCD, runs off into the inverter, which is this one here, the power in on the inverter, and then it comes via the power out on the inverter back into the cupboard behind there, where it is now wired into all of these switches and sockets. So this is all factory, so I can manually turn all the power points off. I can manually turn the air conditioner off, or the hot water system. We've left the hot water system connected because it's only 1.3 kilowatts. This inverter can handle it quite easily, so if I do run out of gas, or I decide not to waste gas and heat it up with hot water because I've got solar or something like that, heat up with electricity, I can choose to do that. But of course the other controls for the hot water service for the gas side of it are over here. Now that means that when I'm on shore power, everything works just like it used to. All the power points all work and everything, but it runs through the inverter and then into the rest of the van. But as soon as the power gets disconnected, the inverter will turn on, and it will now run all of this by itself. The air conditioner in this van pulls around about 750 watts, up to about 800 watts when it's working really hard. So that's plenty for a 2000 watt inverter. The only plug that we've left outside of the inverter, which is still protected by this RCD, it comes out of here and goes directly to it, but that's this one in here, that power point in there. Now that power point is the one that runs the charger. That way when the inverter's running, and you're not plugged into shore power, that is, of course then the charger won't run, because you don't want to, you know, be trying to charge batteries while using inverter power. That's not going to work for you. So that's it. So that's the 240 volt system. It's all mostly factory, with the exception of tapping that in, having the electrician tap that in using the RCD. Now of course the inverter itself has its own RCD, so and that's all protected and connected, and we've got it all earthed out here with a 10mm wire going to the chassis, so that if anything goes wrong it can trip off, and the other one's also earthed to the chassis and they can both trip off. Up here is the standard Ceduna power distribution board for the 12 volt side. I'm moving the remote out of the way for a second, or that one, and all we've done is removed the factory voltmeter, because I don't need it anymore, because I've now got this one sitting right here, which tells me much better than just a voltmeter, and instead I've mounted the power inverter control box here, and you can turn the inverter on. Of course it's not going to actually turn the inverter on because it's got 240 volt power from the shore power plugged in at the moment, so it's going to stay in transfer mode. But if I do turn the shore power off, which I can actually do by tripping that RCD, so the battery charger will turn off, I think. Just waiting, yep, there it goes, it just turned off. So the battery charger's turned off, and we can now see we're using a little bit of power. But it's late in the day here and there's no sun left, so there's no solar really coming in. And we can see that the inverter has changed to, this light's changed to orange, which means the inverter is now on and inverting. Now if and I can push this button and see that it's very low current draw at the moment, and it's not really generating, we're not using any watts. In fact, we're using about between, it's jumping up and down as these different devices are doing stuff, but yeah, very little. But if I was just to turn the air conditioner on, I think it went on. We'll turn the fan. Turn the fan on to full. The fan's on full, the air conditioner's on. It takes a few seconds to turn on. The fan's turned on. We can now see the inverter's inverting a little bit more. And we're currently drawing 9 amps. So the actual compressor hasn't started. Oh, it just started. And there we go. We are 70 amps. 940, 50, 60 watts. That includes, I've got some chargers and other things still plugged in that are drawing a bit of power. But the inverter is currently inverting 950, 940, 930. It's dropping down as the air, I don't know what's happening, but it's dropping down slightly. And that's what's coming out of the batteries at the moment. And you can see if we were to keep using this much power with the air conditioning running and virtually no solar coming in, we're going to have between 9 and 10 hours of use out of that 600 amp hour battery. So we're pretty happy with that. And now of course if the shore power was to come back on for some reason, just like that, the inverter waits for a little bit before it changes over. because it's just making sure that that's clean, good clean power, and it's testing it first. You can see how much battery's been used. Oh, it just changed over as I pushed that button. There we go. 13.4 volts in the battery, and we're back onto shore power, and the air conditioner didn't even turn off at all. It's still running beautifully. And as we can see, the charger's turned back on and putting in some power into the battery. It's going to take 2 hours to charge it at that rate. So yeah, very happy with the way the system works. Like I said, all our power points are hooked up through that, and the whole 12 volt system is being tested and works really well. So yeah, oh, one thing also to note, if you're interested in these vans, these Parks or Cedunas from Ezitrail, they have an Anderson plug in the fridge compartment, which is powered off this button here. Now behind this control panel, and I'll put a photo up of it shortly, but there's a whole row of relays, and each of these buttons controls one of those relays. The main power one has a relay which then powers up all the buttons, and then each individual button does a different thing. This fridge one has some, basically there's I think it's 6 or 10 mil squared wire that runs up into here, which one wire that runs into this whole switch box, which powers everything in the van, all the factory stuff, all the 12 volt factory. So it then went via the cabling from in here via just a standard 40 amp relay to the fridge in the front compartment. Unfortunately, with all this wiring and relays and buttons and all the other gadgets and stuff that's in here, by the time the power gets to the fridge and the fridge turns on, you lose about 1 volt in voltage drop. So I've actually added a second completely separate set of wiring now into the fridge compartment, and it's all powered off this big fuse block here, which runs into there, and that's all what's that, 8 B&S cabling I think I'm using, which is about 6 mil squared, give or take, and that now runs directly into the fridge compartment. So I'll show you outside. And I actually run 2 fridges off it because I couldn't do that with the factory wiring, which I now have. There's the factory one hanging out there, which didn't work very well, but my new ones are at the back there, hooked into both that rear fridge and this front fridge, and it runs them both beautifully. I can draw about, both fridges running together, when you first turn them on, draws around about 10-11 amps or something like that, maybe, if that. But of course fridges cycle, and that's all sorts of different things. I think this one can pull 7 and the other one pulls around about 4 from memory anyhow, without checking it right now. So yeah, that's how I've done that and powered that up. My outdoor sockets are all working and being tested. So yeah, absolutely wrapped. I'll wrap it up now, turn the air conditioner off, and yeah, have a good day everyone.